John Darrow became a star at the end of the silent era and made a very successful debut to the talkies, starring in several films in the early 1930s. But by 1936, he had retired. Why? Join me as I investigate. John Darrow was born as Harry Simpson in 1907 in New Jersey to Henry and Emelina Simpson. Harry was the youngest of 4 siblings. His older brother was Alan Simpson, who became a silent film actor in the 1920s. His older sister was Alice Simpson, who would become an actress herself, and mother to actress/models Alice, Barbara, and Madeline, all of whom would adopt the last name Darrow after their famous uncle. I couldn't find very much information about Harry's childhood, but at the age of 17, he acted in The Pilgrims, a part of Yale University's Chronicles of America series that was released through Pathé in 1924. I'm assuming that since the film was most likely shot on the East Coast, that's how young Harry was able to secure a part in the picture. In it, he played William Bradford Jr., the teenage son of a separatist who journeys with his family to Plymouth Rock in the New World. According to an article I found from the Yale Library, this film and the others in the series failed to find an audience and were financial flops. Harry finished high school and around 1925 began acting in touring summer stock theater productions. I'm assuming that he followed his older siblings into the business and then followed Alan in particular out to Hollywood. Alan had begun acting in silence as early as 1919 and eventually was starring opposite Gloria Swanson in Society Scandal and Florence Fedor in Seahorses. It also could have been through Alan's connections that young Harry got a part in The Pilgrims. However it happened, Harry was in Hollywood by 1927 and played a bit part in Harry Langdon's comedy Long Pants before being promoted to leading man status in only his second film, High School Hero, released by Fox later that year. In an article in Picture Play on movie star siblings, young Harry apparently chose his new name, John Darrow, so he could make it on his own in Hollywood and not have to rely on his brother's existing fame. In High School Hero, John played Bill, rival to Pete, who was played by Nick Stewart, particularly for the affections of Eleanor, played by Sally Phipps. The movie appears to have done very well, and both John and Nick got great reviews in Variety, who predicted their careers would only climb upward as juvenile leading men. In 1928, John starred in another hit film, the Paramount police crime drama classic, The Racket, which also starred Thomas Meehan and Marie Prevost, and was produced by Howard Hughes. John played cub reporter Dave Ames, who falls in love with gangster Moll Helen, played by Marie, and unwittingly becomes the target of her boyfriend's older brother, the bootlegging crime boss Nick Scarsey, played by Louis Wilhelm's Rage. The film was a huge hit and was nominated for the Oscar for Best Picture at the first Academy Awards. Also in 1928, John starred with Jack Holt, Doris Hill, and Olga Baklanova in Avalanche, which got him good mention again in Variety, and starred in Prep and Pep, a similar film to High School Hero, which got him good notices in the New York Times and Variety, who stated that he played the bully well and makes him real, and frankly walks away with the picture along with his co-star Frank Albertson. In 1929, John made his talkie debut at Fox as one of the leads in Girls Gone Wild, which also starred Sue Carroll and Nick Stewart. Sadly, this film is lost, and the reviews of the movie don't mention a lot about John, but mention that Fox was promoting Sue and Nick as their newest screen team. John's other talkie from 1929 is also lost, The Argyle Case, which teamed him with Thomas Meehan again, this time in a mystery film. John starred as Bruce Argyle, the nephew of a murdered man who is in love with the prime suspect, played by Lila Lee. Unfortunately, the New York Times said that John was a little out of his element in this role. But John's third talkie, which was a huge smash hit, survives and is one of his most famous works, Howard Hughes' sensational World War I epic Hell's Angels, which also starred Ben Lyon, James Hall, and a young Jean Harlow, who was launched into megastardom following its release. John played Karl Armstedt, a young German man that goes to Oxford and later must fight against his school friends, Ben and James, when war breaks out. Jean Harlow played Helen, the beautiful young lady that comes between the two brothers. The movie was the fourth biggest hit of 1930 and got John a great mention in Variety, who called his performance a standout. John began 1931 starring in Primrose Path, a B-movie, before playing a supporting role in the William Farnham vehicle 10 Nights in a Ballroom. However, his triumph of 1931 was the delightful The Lady Refuses, which was produced at RKO and in which he starred alongside Betty Compson. In it, John played Russell Courtney, a rich playboy who was being led astray by a gold digger played by Margaret Lindsay. In desperation, his father, played by Gilbert Emery, hires destitute June, Betty, to lure Russell away from his girlfriend, leading to many humorous romantic situations. According to Variety, the film did well financially and, in my opinion, contains one of John's all-time best performances. RKO was also impressed and signed him, promoting him in a spread in Variety with its other stars. You can see this film in its entirety for free on my YouTube channel. As wonderful as John's work in The Lady Refuses was, RKO didn't really seem to know what to do with him afterward. First, they put him in Robert Woolsey's first film apart from his comedy partner Burt Wheeler, Everything's Rosy. John played a love interest to Anita Louise, who played Woolsey's daughter. Motion Picture Herald gave John a good review, but the film was not a critical hit otherwise, although it was a small commercial one. He then co-starred with Edna May Oliver, Rochelle Hudson, and Helen Chandler, but was overshadowed by the performances of those three talented ladies in that film. In 1932, RKO seems to have dropped John, who moved on to make several leading appearances at Poverty Row Studios over the next few years that truly showcase his range as an actor. First, he starred with Sally Blaine in Probation for Chesterfield Pictures' production, Probation, as Nick, a man arrested for beating up a man when defending his kid sister, played by Betty Grable. He is then put into the custody of a judge's niece, played by Sally Blaine, to work off his debts to society as her chauffeur. Naturally, love blooms. The film got all involved good mentions and Variety. Next, he starred with Sarah Patton in The Midnight Lady as another drunk, wealthy playboy, a role that he appears to be often typecast in, but frankly, no one did better. He would play the same type of role again in Alias Mary Smith, this time opposite Blanche Mahaffey. In 1933, John got to play a different type of role in the mystery Strange People, as a young man who was brought to a mansion alongside 11 other people who all realized that they were on a jury that sent an innocent man to death row and think someone is trying to pick them off one by one. That same year, he played boxer Knockout Frankie, who gangsters try to manipulate in The Big Chance, and had some truly charming moments opposite his love interest, who was played by Myrna Kennedy. In 1934, John starred in another one of his best roles, as gambler Larry Sturgis in Monte Carlo Nights. The film follows Larry's marriage to Mary Vernon, played by Mary Bryan. As the two are enjoying a trip to Monte Carlo, Larry is wrongfully arrested for murder and Mary must work to clear his name. It was another wonderful performance by John, demonstrating he was more than capable of doing something other than being just a drunken playboy. You can see this movie in its entirety on my YouTube channel as well. Also in 1934, John returned to his niche as the wealthy Alan Scoresby in The Curtain Falls. He also supported Dick Powell and Ruby Keeler in Flirtation Walk, a big Warner Brothers musical in which he played a military officer out to humiliate the private played by Powell. In 1935, John had one last starring role, Symphony of Living. In it, he and Evelyn Brent played the money-hungry, ungrateful children of musician Al Sheen, who desert him once he can no longer play his instrument. Following this film, John appeared in 5 more films and supporting roles. His final film was 1936's Crime Over London, which saw him as a member of a gang of thieves. Following its wrap, John retired from acting, but did not leave Hollywood. Beginning in the late 1930s, John became one of Hollywood's most successful agents. Also, from the late 30s until the early 50s, he was in a relationship with famed director and choreographer Charles Walters. I couldn't find much information about John's later life. I'm assuming he lived in quiet retirement once he reached an older age. He passed away in 1980 at the age of 72. So we are left with the question, why did John Darrow's talkie career lose its momentum after such an impressive start? I think there are 2 reasons. First, he was a successful juvenile lead in Late Silence, and transitioning to talkies, it was hard to age out of those roles into another niche. Fortunately, he found a niche as a wealthy playboy that are often humorously inebriated, but after playing that role most successfully in The Lady Refuses, his home studio, RKO, seemed unsure how to keep up his momentum and tried to put him back in juvenile roles. As a result, He was probably dropped and then did the best he could at Poverty Row Studios for a few years before pursuing a new career altogether as an agent. However, as is often the case, John had some of his better roles in B movies at Poverty Row and really demonstrated his range in such films as The Big Chance and Probation. I suggest checking out both of those movies on YouTube, and also please check out his finest performance, in my opinion, The Lady Refuses, on my YouTube channel. Here's to you, John Darrow. Please like and subscribe or follow this account if you want to learn more about the history of silent film stars whose stardom lasted only briefly in the talkies. Up next, join me as I cover the silent to talkie career of Dorothy Davenport. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend.